okay, what I've seen a lot in the last 6 months on the internet, I'm not saying that it's true or not, but I've seen a lot of like the rare earth minerals used to make lithium-ion battery, in particular cobalt, where it's coming from areas where there's war, attrition, famine.
A lot of the cobalt is in Congo, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's an awful lot in Bolivia apparently as well, from the salt mines. So my question is like, Apple and all these other international companies are speaking about ethical challenges. Would you be happy driving a car that, remember the blood diamond scandal?
Oh yeah.
Would you be happy having something, a car is the second biggest investment a normal family will make. After their house, it's the car. Would you be happy spending, it's one thing to spend, 10 euros on an item of clothing for your kid and it's been made in India or Bangladesh, and we all know, they all try to be ethical about it, but we all know there's child labor involved in it, right? Would you be happy in buying a car, spending that much amount of money, and in an indirect way contributing to these wars, to this famine, to this child labor? I wouldn't.
I think there's a lot to be said about that, and perhaps we're not seeing the full picture or the implications of what is happening in those territories, and maybe we should be asking as well, to what extent are we in control of the dissemination of those resources, the volumes we need to globalize that technology, the amount of resources we need and where they are at the moment. How are we going to get hold of them? To what extent are we contributing to instability, or how is instability going to affect the supply and therefore affect our efforts to globalize it? And there's definitely a lot that we're not in control of and we can't even see.
Well, I just want to come back to close on one of the points that you mentioned about the zero emissions.
Go on.
Practical examples, because I think when you can deal with a practical example, it's easier, right? A guy 2 doors down from my parents, he bought a Hyundai, whatever the fuck it's called, fully electric vehicle. Now, I come from a small city in Ireland, it's called Kilkenny, it's 30,000 people. You can walk around it, you don't need a car. If you have to go to the hospital, it's 2 kilometers outside, you get a taxi really if your leg is broken. But he bought this electric vehicle car, it's fully electric, and he's delighted with it. Fair play to him, it was £24,000, 24,000 euros. But the point is this, he didn't need it. He bought it to have it. There's a fad involved in it, There's a fad involved in it. And, whenever, the first thing he said when I asked him about the car was that he goes, yeah, but it's zero emissions. You've got a freaking Renault and it's, spewing out diesel fumes and everything else. Mine's a Euro 4, so it's not exactly, unless it's spewing out diesel fumes, it doesn't have that big smoke screen like in the James Bond films. It's a Euro 4 Renault Laguna. So he's quite happy to ravage on about zero emissions. And as you said earlier on, and that's the point I think that a lot of people miss. An EV is not zero emissions.
They only see the cover.
A butcher. You go to a butcher, you buy a chunk of meat. The butcher is zero emissions. Now the pig or the cow before, it had emissions to produce the meat. Well, when you consume the meat, you're going to have emissions. No? So there is no such thing as zero emissions, and anyone thinking that there is does not understand. Energy does not. Tesla would have said yes, and he was looking into it. We'll go back to the JP Morgan, how it opened. Tesla had, in some way, invented a system. I'm convinced of this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't buy into them. I listen to them because I like to listen to both sides. Maybe they're right. He had come up with a system where he could transmit energy wirelessly 100 years ago. JP Morgan was his financer. JP Morgan now is telling me that in 2025, 35% of EV cars are going to be on the road, blah, blah, blah. There is no such thing as zero emissions. The energy to drive the cars is going to come from coal burning, gas burning, nuclear power stations, and it's going back to what do the Americans call it? NIMBY, not in my backyard. No one wants more power stations. No one wants burners. So where's the energy going to come to? Now the hybrids, the Priuses, I agree with them. I have no problem with them. But a total EV vehicle and the infrastructure to put it in, for me, ain't going to happen. Not in my lifetime. And I hope I can live till I'm 70 and see, but I can't see this happening. I can't see the infrastructure being built. I can't see nuclear power plants going up left, right, and center. The Americans will be happy. Westinghouse will be happy. The Russians will be happy. But the population don't want, we've already had one Chernobyl already in Europe. We've had Fukushima in Japan with the earthquake.
That's quite clear.
I don't think people want nuclear reactors anymore. And I think before we start looking at lithium, I think we should go back and see how can we generate as much energy as that we're going to need eventually. I think we've put the horse before the cart. Sorry, the cart before the horse.
Speaking of horses, back in the day when London was all about...
They weren't zero emissions either, you know that.
The horse, the cart and the manure.
Yeah, they weren't zero emissions.
So when the car came along and it displaced the horse in the cart, nobody had to subsidize it, nobody had to offer...
You sure? Did the English government not come in and give people money to buy a car?
Free parking?
No,
ports? No.
Really?
How
did that happen?
That the manure just disappeared very, very quickly off the roads, and there was not
that
much
explains
incentive.
the roses in Buckingham Palace why they're so red.
It may have a lot to do with that, but we're seeing a massive drive to electrification that has it has a massive financial and political support, and to an extent we're accepting that lithium technology is going somewhere, electric vehicles are going somewhere, and I think a lot of us are not by any means trying to hold the technology back. We're trying to say, look guys, maybe the pacing of it is a bit too quick. Maybe recycling technology has to catch up with how we are deploying these resources and how we're making those batteries. And think about the cost as well. If in some parts of the world where this technology could make a huge difference, like take Southeast Asia for example, if you have vehicles averaging a price of $1,000, there's a lot to be said about how much money you want to spend on a battery. And actually, current technology like lead acid battery, which is very low cost, very recyclable. I mean, sure, there are problems with it, but those problems can be addressed, and they have to do with recycling of the battery rather than the battery itself. That can be a medium for electricity. That can solve the power crisis, not energy crisis, but power crisis that's facing the roads. And in some parts of the world, that's what you need. You need cheap, safe, reliable technology to deliver electricity to the car, and not something that is so much more expensive than the vehicle that it kind of becomes its own stumbling block towards deployment. Food for thought.
Is it done? Is it came to our common agreement?